If you believe it's good and you believe that you have a moral responsibility to build wealth in your life, and that if you have more abundance and prosperity financially, that you can do bigger and better things for more people, you're naturally going to be more attracted to the activities and behaviors that produce wealth in your life. You're not going to save your money. You're not going to bury it so it can't be used. You're going to go out and enlist, deploy your dollars, and they're going to go out there and like little soldiers, little minions, and they're going to go collect their friends and they're going to come back to you. I love that, that visual. Gentlemen, welcome to the Order of Man podcast. This is your weekly Ask Me Anything. Normally, I'm joined by my good friend and co-host, Kip Sorensen, but he could not make it this week, so I am flying solo, and you get to hear from me. I always say for better or worse, mostly worse. Kip adds a dynamic that is definitely missed when he's not here on these Ask Me Anythings. And normally when we start this program out, what we usually do is discuss headlines, but headlines aren't nearly as enjoyable if I am not communicating with someone else. So I've got a couple of headlines and some new thoughts for headlines and segments that we're going to do here on the Ask Me Anything podcast. But I'm going to wait until next week when Kip is back. So for today, I just want to jump right into the questions. We're going to get to some questions, and I've gone through most of them, not all of them. Some really good questions from the Iron Council, which is our exclusive brotherhood. If you want to know more about that, head to orderofman.com/Iron Council. And then also we're going to get to a couple of questions, if time permits, inside of our free Facebook group, which can be found at facebook.com/groups/Order of Man. I believe we have 75,000 guys over there. And I think that we have about 1,100, a little less than 1,100 over in the Iron Council. So hopefully I'll see you in both places. But let's just jump right into it, guys. Like I said, good questions. And if you're new to the podcast, we cover all things men, manliness, masculinity, fatherhood, leadership, self-development, strength, fitness, finance, and of course, cultural commentary and thoughts as well. So let's get into it. This one, and you'll see how well I do with names. I always give Kip a hard time for mispronouncing names, but you'll see I'm probably not much better, maybe worse. This one comes from Tony Bahal. He says, after some good shifts and positive movement in my life, I find myself leaning somewhat complacent. How do you stay intentional about continuing to push, or are quarterly battle plans enough of a regular evaluation for you? They are for me. I've never really had the problem of complacency. I guess that's not true. I guess there have been points or periods in my life where I've coasted and rested on my laurels or my past accomplishments and achievements. But I think just with my personality, it lends to being driven and motivated and ambitious and wanting more, doing better, being better in all facets of my life has not really been too much of a concern for me personally. But that's not to say it doesn't impact a lot of men. I hear from a lot of men every day, in fact, who have grown complacent or lethargic. And a couple of things that I would suggest for somebody who's like that. Number one, you've just got to mix up your life a little bit. And I'm not saying blow everything up. I'm not saying like go quit your job and yell at your boss and burn the bridge, or go find a new fling, or go do something reckless and stupid, or spend your money unnecessarily. That's not what I'm saying at all. But I am saying within the realm of your current responsibilities, are there some new things that you can try? Are there some new interests, some new hobbies, some new activities? Is there a potential vacation that you've always wanted to go on, but have made excuses as to why you can't go do that thing? You know, take your family on, even if it's an extended weekend where you guys just get away to a neighboring town or somewhere close and you don't spend a bunch of money, but you mix it up. Maybe there's something within the capacity of your work that you could do. It's taking on a new task or assignment or a project. But for me, I found that most of the time when I get complacent, if I do, it's because life is boring and it's monotonous. Now, I have talked about in the past the importance of having a vision. And if you have a vision for your life, then you can always measure what you're currently doing against that. But sometimes it's not enough. We get in mental states and we get setbacks we have to deal with, and maybe even we deal with depressed down days. If it's chronic, that's different, but it happens. And I don't know if in that case, tying your actions to a long-term vision is enough just to get you out of that rut. And that's the analogy I use. If you're driving down a muddy road, sometimes you just got to turn the wheel and give it some gas. And that's going to get you out of the rut. But you got to be careful because it's very easy to slip back into that rut. And so giving it gas in your life looks like doing something new, doing something different, maybe calling an old buddy that you haven't seen for a while. Maybe you and your wife do that vacation, or maybe you spice it up in the bedroom. Maybe there's a task at work, all the things that I just said. Even working out. I love strength training. It's really enjoyable to me. I like to push myself. I like to see how strong I can get. I enjoy it personally, but also it gets monotonous. And so on those days where it is monotonous, I might choose to do something else, whether it's jujitsu, or I might even just do some cardio or stair climbers or whatever, just to mix up my life a little bit. So you can mix it up and still stay on course and still stay on track. And that's one of the most important things, that you stay on track, stay with your battle plan, but mix it up within your plan. I hope that helps, Tony. Next one comes from Scott Vandewater. He says, what are some of the most underrated habits that can help men build confidence and resilience in today's world? I thought of two when I saw this question. And there's an infinite number of characteristics and habits and values that I could get into, but I thought of two that I think are really, really important. One is fairly obvious, and the other is not so obvious or often overlooked. As you said, underrated. For building confidence, I think there's a misconception that some men are just more confident than others. And I don't think that's true, because I don't think you can I should say this. They're not automatically more confident. They're just not blessed with confidence. They've earned it. So there are, just to clarify, there are men who are more confident than others, but it's because they've earned it relative to somebody else. But it's not just bestowed. It's not a characteristic trait that people are just born with. Arrogance, pride, ego, all of those things are pretty innate within us, I believe. And we have to fight against those natural desires. You've often heard me talk about the natural man. Confidence, however, is earned. And it's earned through, first, courage. This is the formula I've shared with you guys. Courage first. Courage to do something different, to ask for the sale, to ask for the date, to have a difficult conversation, to do something brave, to start a new business or a podcast, to write a book, fill in the blank. It takes courage. And the beautiful thing about courage is you can just decide that you're going to be courageous. There's something in front of you, you want whatever it is, and you have to just be courageous enough to go after it. It's just a decision. With courage comes competency. So the more courageous you are in taking those actions every single day, you're going to start to develop and build a competency with having difficult conversations, or approaching attractive women, or going to the gym and doing weightlifting and building your muscles, and taking on assignments and tasks at work, and learning how to podcast, or getting better at writing the book. You're going to develop competency. And then through the competency, now that fosters confidence. So that's the formula. Courage, competency, confidence. So in order for a man to build that level of confidence, one of the things that he's really going to need to do, and this is another C in that formula, and this is my first point, he has to be hyper consistent. Just robotic, monotonous at times, unfailable, unflappable. You're just going to continue to drive on in the course of whatever comes your way, and you're just going to make the decision that come hell or high water, I'm going to do the work required to achieve the result that I desire. So if it's the gym and you don't feel like going to the gym today because you're tired and you had a long day yesterday and you're a little sore from a couple days ago and the workout you did, or maybe you're a little under the weather, you get your butt out of bed and you go to the gym. If you say, hey, I'm going to start a podcast, you can't just start it and hope that it's all going to work out and everything's going to, all your wildest dreams are going to come true and you're going to be able to get the best high-level name guests on the podcast that you could imagine out of the gate. I still get turned down today after doing this for nearly 10 years now. It takes time. When I started this podcast, I remember I talked with a friend of mine. His name is Ever Gonzalez. I actually haven't talked with Ever for a while. I got to reach out to him. So a side note. And I remember when I talked with him, I said, hey, I'm going to do this podcast and I'm going to do it for 2 years. 2 years before I even evaluate whether or not I should continue or throw in the towel. Now, obviously, I was going to make pivots and adjust and get better in that 2 years, but I was not making any decisions as to whether or not I was or was not going to continue until I reached that 2-year mark. And I made the decision way earlier than 2 years that I was going to do this for as long as I could foresee, indefinitely. And here we are in March coming up on our 10-year anniversary, and we've done over 1,500, probably closer to 1,550 podcasts at this point. So that's a lot of podcasting. And there's been days that I haven't wanted to do it. There's been times in my life that have been dark and challenging and full of struggle and emotional turmoil. And every single week for the 3 episodes that we now do every week, I'm here, I'm doing the thing. And if I'm not here, I have somebody else filling in for me. But it is imperative that we maintain our consistency. And I've often said that me personally, I can't speak for you, I don't have the luxury of not being consistent. I'm not talented enough. I'm not good looking enough. I'm not wealthy enough. I'm not connected enough. I don't have the skill sets innate in some people that I think where they're just naturally inclined to be good at certain things. I don't have that. I'm just a regular, maybe slightly better than average in some things, certainly not everything. And that's it. So the only thing I have going for me is that I'm ruthlessly consistent. I do not miss. When I dedicate myself to something, I go all in and I don't miss, and I do it day in and day out forever or as long as it takes. So that's number one. Number two, and I think this is a little bit, I don't think it's counterintuitive necessarily, but I think it's something people overlook. Your ability to generate small talk and conversation with strangers is a hugely underrated habit. Most people, I was at the gym this morning, and most people have their earbuds in and they're in their own world and in their own bubble and whatever, that's fine. Like if it helps them work out and stay focused, or they just need alone time or want to listen to a good ebook or some music, all for it, no problem. But for me, when I go to the gym, it's a bit of a social thing for me as well. I work at home. I'm by myself here most of the days. Like I like the social aspect of it. And I like striking up conversations with new people that I've never met before or I've never talked with before. And I can't tell you how good it feels to know that you can start a conversation with somebody from scratch and develop some level of rapport in a very short period of time. The other benefit of this, especially as it relates to confidence, is that you're going to create all sorts of opportunities. Opportunities for business, opportunities for personal friendships and relationships, opportunities for potentially romantic relationships if you're in the market. So many opportunities are going to come from that. And when a man has opportunities, he's more confident. Let me give you an example. If you're struggling at work, maybe like Tony was talking about earlier, you've grown complacent, maybe you're not enjoying work as much, but you know because you're good at networking, you're good at creating small talk, you're good at connecting with other people, that you have 3 or 4 or 5 other job opportunities lined up right now. There's a level of confidence and swagger that comes with that. You can hold your head up high and your chest out and your shoulders back a little bit easier, knowing that I have job opportunities over here if this one isn't something I like or this one falls through. Same thing when it comes to if you're dating. Now, a lot of guys that listen are either in relationships or they're married at this point. But if you're dating, casually dating, if you have one option, I mean, you're going to cling to that one option because that's all you have. But if you have other options, plenty of high quality options in women that you would love to spend more time with, then you aren't likely to really have to pander to a woman or change who you are or jeopardize your values or your personality or your desires because you have to make this one relationship work. The best way to do that is to create as many opportunities as you possibly can, because when you have those opportunities, you're more confident with your current scenario and situation because you can just be yourself and you can let loose, and there's less pressure for you to perform in a certain way if it's not something that you actually want to do. And the only way I know how to create opportunities is learning how to connect with people. That's the only way. I never had an opportunity arise without it being somewhat involved with somebody else. whether it's somebody who's listening to a podcast or buying my product or my service or giving me a job or sponsoring the podcast, like, for example, Montana Knife Company. Josh Smith with Montana Knife, I met years and years ago. Jess up there, who works in the marketing team for them now, I've known her for probably 5 years, long before she ever worked with Montana Knife. And I think she would probably tell you too that her ability to connect is what got her and her husband up to Montana, working with Montana Knife Company. Guys, learn how to small talk, learn how to approach people, learn how to tell a joke, learn how to make somebody laugh, learn how to make a statement that maybe they haven't heard before that gets them out of the routine. The other day I was at, where was I? Oh, I was at the pharmacy the other day. And the pharmacy tech, I think that's the term they use. I know her. And I said, hey, how you doing? And she's like, I'm doing pretty okay. And it kind of stopped me in my tracks, because what do most people do? They follow the script. The script is, I'm doing good. How about you? That's the script. So when I asked that question, I thought she was just going to follow the script, but she didn't. And because she didn't, it generated a funny conversation, like, oh, pretty okay, just okay. And we had just a quick interaction because she was working and I was running errands. But you gotta, when it comes to small talk, you've got to do something different to jar people from the script. That's how you connect. But this is a whole separate conversation. But the point is that if you can learn to do small talk and learn how to network, you're definitely going to build confidence. And of course, the resilience that comes with options. All right, let's go to Anthony Correa. He says, good morning, everyone. I want to start by expressing my gratitude. The Order of Man and the Iron Council have been pivotal moments in my life. Thank you for your time. I did not tell him to say that, and I am reading from his comments, so I'm not making that up either. He says, for my contribution quadrant, I aim to improve my communication with my family, friends, and coworkers by reading and implementing 3 books over the next 90 days. All right, well, there's already a little dilemma I see here, but we'll continue. I've heard great things about How to Win Friends and Influence People by Dale Carnegie, so I've started with this book. Can you recommend 2 other books that will help me with my communication skills? What are your tips and tricks for comprehension and retaining information while reading a book? All right, so I'm going to have to think on 2 books to help improve your communication skills. Actually, one is, I'm going to pull it up here. It's been a while, but I think this is a really good book for you if you're looking to work on your communication. There it is. It's called Coactive Coaching, Changing Business, Transforming Lives. This is more of a professional or career-oriented book, but the whole premise of coactive coaching is learning how to communicate effectively by listening to what other people have to share and by soliciting and getting them to speak and share information so that you can learn what you need to learn in order to help transform their life, help develop in their career, help your wife, help whoever it might be. So coactive coaching is a very, very good book. I recommend that one, especially if you're in the coaching business. But even if you're not, you can learn a lot about how to communicate effectively with other people. Another really good book that I like is Robert Cialdini, and it's called Influence. I just want to make sure I get these right. Influence, the Psychology of Persuasion. So this one will help you understand people more and understand certain techniques that people use, not to negatively manipulate people, although there are some examples of that. But I think learning human psychology is going to help you communicate better, because you're going to start to get to the root of what people want, what they need, and what they actually respond to. So that's a really good book. And then, of course, there's 48 Laws of Power. I'm trying to give you different books than just like the normal communication books, because you can figure that out on your own. But this is the 48 Laws of Power by Robert Greene. That's another good one. Just learning the game of life and the power dynamics that exist in relationships and businesses and communities. but that's called 48 Laws of Power. So there's 3 books, a little that answers your question, but a little on a different vein, just because you can just Google communication books and find all the books. So those are a little different. As far as tips and tricks for comprehending and reading, I talked about this on the Ask Me Anything we did, I think a couple of weeks ago. What I do when I read a book is I never read a book without a highlighter. I always have a highlighter with me when I'm reading. In fact, I probably have it just right. Oh no, it's over on my nightstand. So I'll read a book, and then if I see a sentence or a paragraph or even a full page, I just take that pink highlighter and I just highlight whatever the paragraph is or the sentence or just a line straight through the entire page. And then what I do is I just do a little dog ear on the page itself, and then I just continued reading. To me, this has worked really well because I don't get tripped up. I see that there's something important. And some people will spend a lot more time on it. I like to get through the whole book because it gives that other passage additional context that is important in many cases. So I'll do that, and then I'll get through the entire book, and I might have, 30 pages or so of a traditional book, like 10 to 15% of the pages are marked. And again, it could be a sentence, it could be a paragraph, it could be a concept. If it makes me think of something else, I usually will write in the margin, this paragraph means this to me. And then I go back when I'm done with the book and I just start reading the dog-eared pages, and I read in order to apply. And that's one of the things that I wanted to talk with you about real quickly, Anthony, is you said, for your contribution quadrant, I'm going to improve my communication with family, friends, and coworkers. Love that. And then you said, by reading and implementing 3 books over the next 90 days, implementation is going to be the biggest thing for you. And I'm not even sure if you necessarily should read 3 in 90 days. You certainly could. That's doable. But I would be more pressed to say, hey, why don't you just read 1 book on communication and spend 80% of your time implementing what you're learning? So for example, if you're going to pick How to Win Friends and Influence People, read that book, use the tactic of highlighting and dog-earing the pages, and then maybe every week for the next 12 weeks, that's your 90-day battle plan, you take 1 concept from the book and you apply it for a week. And then the next week you do that previous concept and concept 2, and the next week. And by the time you're done, you're doing 10 to 11 to 12 different things that you were not doing before. That's going to be way more effective with learning how to communicate with your family, friends, and coworkers than it is to read 3 books and try to implement all of this stuff. So I just think the ratio of your activity could be a little heavily weighted towards reading, and you can't communicate with people by reading. You only get better at communicating with people by actually communicating with people. Now, I'm not saying just go do it haphazardly, but if you, like I said earlier, if you're trying to start conversations with people, just random people at the gym or at the grocery store or wherever it may be when appropriate, even if you didn't read a book, you're going to get significantly better at communicating if you learn to read what they're thinking or read their body language or look for subtle social cues, do a little after action review. You're going to get way better at that than if you read a book at all. And again, I'm not saying don't read a book, just tip it. Read 1 book, 80% should be focused on implementation. All right, let's go to Barry Lawrence. He says, hey, you team, insomnia solutions would help me. My brand is quote unquote, fall asleep within minutes and wake up 1 or 2 hours later, and then I'm up all night. I've been battling with it for 30 years. I've addressed several causes: blue light, not apnea, working out till I drop, etc. Not into pills. I'm getting pretty certain it's stress. Insight on how to quiet the mind, eliminate anxiety, and actually fall asleep. Well, first things first, I'm not a doctor, okay? So I don't know if there's a medical issue happening here. You said it's not sleep apnea, so that's good. But there could be something else. I don't know. So I'm only going to give you ideas and advice based on what I do and what I know with regards to falling asleep. Number 1 is watch your caffeine. That is big. I like to have a Red Bull here and there. And I noticed that if I have one late at night, I can usually fall asleep. That's not an issue. I can fall asleep if I have a Red Bull, no problem. but I usually find myself tossing and turning in the middle of the night or even waking up in the middle of the night because I had that and the caffeine kicks in and then I'm up. So popular wisdom says to stop consuming caffeine after about 2 o'clock in the afternoon. Also, watch your alcohol intake. I don't know if you drink. I don't know if you're having a few drinks before bedtime, but a lot of people will, and they'll say, oh, it helps me relax and it puts me to sleep. No, it actually doesn't do either of those things. It knocks you out. It hinders your ability to function properly. So you're not actually resting, you're passed out. I used to say that when I was in the throes of my alcohol abuse, is like, you know, I would say I'm asleep. That's not accurate. I was passed out. And that's different because you're not actually getting the proper rest. And I don't know the science behind it. I'm sure somebody like Andrew Huberman or Matthew Walker could probably tell you, he's a big sleep guy, could probably tell you the science behind it. But I'm just telling you, if you're drinking before you go to bed, you're probably going to fall asleep, quote unquote, really fast, AKA pass out. And then you'll wake up in the middle of the night and because your body's like, hey, we're rested. We just slept for 4 hours. Like, we're ready to go now. Well, no, you're not. But the alcohol is messing with you. So those are two things. Another thing before you go to bed. So those are both before you go to bed. Another thing before bed is be very careful of the electronics. You alluded to blue light here, which is good. That's the light illuminating from our devices and TVs and electronics. You can use blue light blockers. Best thing to do is just to do away with electronics altogether. Another thing that's helpful when it comes to sleeping is that the bed, when you're in bed, it should be for two things, sleep and sex. That's how I look at it. I want to train my body that when I get into bed, one of those two things is going to happen, and that's it. I'm not in there playing games. I do occasionally watch a movie because I've got the TV here, but I don't like to do that and fall asleep to that necessarily. I think it messes with your sleep. So usually if I'm watching a movie, I'm on the couch, I'll watch a movie on the couch, and then I'll get in bed and go to sleep when I'm ready to go to bed. I usually do fall asleep on the couch, which probably is not a great thing either. But yeah, designate the bed for exactly what it's for and do nothing else. Train your body to know that, hey, when you get in there, you're going to sleep. Outside of that, what I would say is maybe read a good book. Keep the lights low, but read a really good book. Read something not heavy. Just read something light. Maybe it's even fictional work. Jack Carr's got some great series that you can read. Lee Child, Jack Reacher, the Lee Child and Andrew Child who writes those. Those are good fictional works that I enjoy. Never look at your phone before you go to bed. Especially don't ever pull up your emails. If I pull up my emails, man, it's over. I'm not going to sleep for a very long time. So my emails do not get checked before I go to bed. And then as far as the way your sleeping arrangement should be set up is find a mattress that's suitable for you. I like a fairly firm mattress. I'm either a stomach sleeper or a side sleeper. So I need to have that support. So I like a firm mattress. And then you want to make sure it's as dark as it can be. So I don't know if you have like street lights coming in your window. I have blackout curtains on my door here that goes out to the backyard, and the window light blocking drapes, black light blocking drapes. All the little lights on electronics. You know, I've got like a printer over here and it's got like a little red light, and then my TV has like a little blue light, and then the power surge button right here has like a little red light. I actually went through and put black electrical tape on all of that. I've got other little gadgets and gizmos in here. I unplug all of that because I want it as dark as it can possibly be. I want zero light in here when I go to bed. And then the other thing is the temperature. And you're going to have to probably fight your wife on this a little bit, but I think 68, 69 degrees is pretty commonly held practice for the best temperature for falling and staying asleep. That's what I do. So I don't know if you've tried all of those things, but if not, give them a try. Let me know how that works out for you because sleep is crucial. All right, let's go over to Joe Johnston. He says, good morning from Port Liberty. Crazy at work today, but I think my main question is how to actively be less complacent. Okay, so we talked about this. What habits can we form in our head to basically, quote unquote, quit bitching? Have a great day, guys. Vision is done. Ready to work on objectives and quadrants this week. The only other thing I would say on this, Joe, outside of what I talked about with Troy, is making sure, since you're talking about your vision, and we alluded to it a little bit earlier, just making sure that that is dialed in, that it is emotionally charged, that it's actually very compelling for you. And if it's not, then you're not going to be motivated to do big and great things. You just won't. But if you can associate the work that you're doing professionally, personally, within your family, financially, all the work that you're doing, and you can tie it directly to some long-term vision of the way you see your life going, and it's inextricably connected, I think you're going to have an easier time staying motivated when things get hard, work's tough, you feel like you're in a rut, can't get out of this groove that you've been in. If it's compelling, then I think that in a lot of ways will compel you to keep going, even though you're feeling burnt up and burnt out. And of course, the other ideas that I gave you with mixing things up and trying new things. All right, let's go over to Kevin Nickel, battle team leader for Team Romulus, a great man. He says, we can sometimes compare ourselves to others, leading to an inflated ego, resulting in telling ourselves that we are better than others. We can also compare ourselves to others, resulting in thinking that we can never be where that person is or what they have accomplished. How do you get out of the comparison trap? So I have a bit of a different take on the comparison trap. I actually don't think it's bad if you do it in a healthy way. Now, don't get me wrong. It can be bad. If it leads to, Kevin, what you just said, thinking that you could never accomplish what another person has accomplished, that's an issue. I sometimes fall into that on social media a lot of the times, or other podcasters that I admire and respect what they're doing, where I think, well, how come I'm not as far as that person? Or why didn't I have that guest on the podcast? Or why do I not get as many downloads or have as many social media followers as this person or that person? And it's no longer a healthy way to look at what other people are doing. It's actually a toxic trait. It's a toxic behavior. So in that case, I cut it out. And I've done this probably half a dozen to a dozen times over the past 10 years, where I notice I might get fixated on one particular person. Let's say Joe Rogan, for example. I don't feel this way about Joe Rogan. I actually look at what he's doing and it inspires me. Like, if that guy can do what he's doing, then I certainly can. Nothing against Joe Rogan. I think he's great. I think he's wonderful. But I don't think he's superhuman. I think he's probably a pretty ordinary guy doing some incredible things because of his work ethic and his characteristics and the things that he's done. And that inspires me. But let's say it didn't. Let's say every time I got behind this microphone, I'm like, man, Joe Rogan, I'm never going to be able to be as good as him, and never going to have the guests, never going to make the money, never going to impact or have his level of reach. In that case, I would completely stop listening to Joe Rogan. I would unfollow his social media accounts. I would unsubscribe from any like Twitter or any emails that I might get or be sent out. I would just completely get rid of it because it's toxic. And like I said, I've done that at points in my life and in my career over the past 10 years where I've just completely stepped away from somebody where I start to get that toxic feeling. And it's nothing against them at all. It's my own issue. So it's not an indictment against what a person I have to unfollow is doing. It's just, hey, I can't, because it's consuming my thoughts, and I don't want it to be that way. When it comes to thinking that we're better than other people, I just try to look at their worth as human souls, not even human beings, as souls, sons and daughters of God. Like, I'm not better than anybody else. I might be better at certain things than other people, and other people are better at certain things than me. But that's not the same as their worth as a human being. Everybody's worth is equal. It's unlimited, full of potential. And I used to feel this way. You know what actually helps is being humbled in life. Like, you can, as the phrase goes, you can either be humble or get humbled. And when humility is introduced into the framework, it has a very clear way of letting you know that you shouldn't be passing judgment on other people. Now, I'm careful with that language because a lot of people say, well, you shouldn't judge. I don't actually completely agree with that either. Again, it can be done in a healthy way and an unhealthy way. If I'm judging, for example, who my kids are spending their time with, I would say that's righteous judgment. Like not only am I allowed to make those judgments, I'm required to make those judgments. So if I see that my kids are hanging out with a piece of trash because of not as his worth, but because of the things that he does, then my kids and I are going to have conversations about that. And you better believe I'm judging that person. But if I'm at the gym and I see a guy walk in and he's 80 pounds overweight, I'm not going to laugh at him and say he's inferior or look at this fat guy. And I'm not going to do that because he's at the gym. He's getting after it. I used to be in a very similar boat. And again, that's a level of humility that you can either decide to have, or life or God, however you choose to look at it, is going to deliver it to your inbox. It's just going to happen. More likely, you're going to create a situation yourself that causes you to get humbled. Lose a job, breakdown of a relationship, financial issues, but you will be humbled. So you can decide to do it ahead of time. But that's what I would say. Be humble with those. Know their worth as human souls, not necessarily human beings. And then when it comes to the comparison trap of what other people are doing, get rid of the people that you feel like you're having a toxic relationship with, and only spend time focusing on those people who inspire, motivate, edify, and uplift you. That has nothing to do with them. That's your issue. That's my issue, but it's still one I'm very aware of. And I don't play in that ballpark. All right, let's go to Jeremy Coffey. Actually, one other thing. When you notice yourself, and this comes to comparing the comparison trap of other people and what they have, usually that's what you're comparing yourself to, and that's the comparison trap. You're not usually comparing yourself to the work that it took for that person to achieve the result. It's envious. You just want their result without the effort they had to put in. So if you ever catch yourself discounting somebody's success, that's a red flag that you are falling into the comparison trap. You might not call it that. It might not be so readily available to you or be aware of it, but I promise you, if you're saying, how'd that guy get so lucky? Well, yeah, if I had this or did that or made this connection or had that opportunity, well, then I'd have what he has. You're discounting a person's level of work it took to get there. I've done this even in the gym. Like you, Kevin, you're like a physical specimen. You're strong, you're fit. It used to be where I'd be like, yeah, it's just good genetics. Like Kevin's just got good genes and like there's nothing I could do to look like that. That's just genes. How arrogant of me to say. But the reality is, and you can tell me the truth, because the truth is you bust your ass at the gym. You keep your diet clean, you work hard, you train, you do those things. So anybody who says it's just genes is discounting everything that you did to have what you have. And the guys who are saying that are only saying that because they're envious of what you have, but they're certainly not envious of the work it took to get there. So be aware of that. If you're starting to discount like, oh, that guy got lucky. Oh, he was at the right place at the right time. If that kind of stuff, you're falling into a comparison trap. And instead of looking at what that person has, start asking yourself, what did that person do? If I want to look like Kevin, I'm not going to say genes or luck or whatever. Look, no, I'm going to say, what did Kevin do in order to build that physique and that level of health in his life? And am I willing to personally do it? The answer might be no, by the way. And if that's okay. But if it's not, then you have to actually do the work if you want to experience the result. That's been helpful for me too. All right, let's go to Jeremy Coffey. He says, I was recently asked by an Iron Council member, what's your greatest strength? My answer was that I don't quit. Thinking more about it, that can't be accurate. Otherwise, I'd still be playing youth soccer and trying to get the high score on the Galaga machines at Supreme Pizza. Oh man, throwback to easier times for sure. Can you provide your insights on how, when you choose to move on from something versus putting your head down and trying to make it work no matter what? Okay, I like this question. So here's the distinction that you need to make. There's quitting and there's pivoting. They're cousins, but they're different. Quitting and pivoting. Quitting, in my mind, is doing something that you still have a desire to do. There's still some inkling of desire for you to do it, but you stop doing it because you said it was too hard, or it took too long, or it cost too much. You still want it, but you're saying the sacrifice is too great. To me, that's quitting. So if you were playing soccer when you were a kid and you found out that, you know what, I just don't like soccer, but I like team sports and I want to go try hockey or lacrosse or baseball or football or track or wrestling or whatever. That's not, you didn't quit. I mean, yes, technically, we use that word, he quit playing soccer, but you didn't quit according to the definition I just gave you. You're not interested in it. You pivoted. You said, hey, I like team sports. I like being here. I like being active. I like competing. I like winning. I like getting better. I just don't like the medium of soccer, so I'm going to do baseball. That's not quitting. That's pivoting. Again, quitting is when you still have the desire to do it, but the sacrifice is just, you're not willing to pay the sacrifice. Time, money, energy, resources, etc. Same thing with work. If work's too hard, like you love the job, but the hours are rough and it's hard, but you still have this desire to do it, but you just don't want to put forth the effort, that's quitting. You're betraying yourself is what you're doing. You still want it, but you're not going to do the work to get it. That's a betrayal of yourself. Pivoting is, hey, I'm not interested in that, but here's the elements of the things that I'm interested in, and here's what I'm going to do. I'll give you an example. So I started a podcast in late 2014 called Wealth Anatomy. Some people who listen to this podcast maybe have listened to that podcast or have heard me talk about this. But it was my very first entrance into the podcasting game. It was called Wealth Anatomy. And it was a podcast dedicated to helping healthcare professionals with their financial services, because that's my previous job, a financial advisor. And I did about 20 or 25 episodes. And I realized I really love podcasting. I just don't want to have this conversation. It wasn't that it was too hard. It wasn't that the sacrifice was too much. It was like, I don't even want to have that. I had no desire. So I shut down Wealth Anatomy. You could say quit, quote unquote, but I shut down Wealth Anatomy and I launched Order of Man. And immediately, overnight, I realized, okay, that was such a pivotal moment. I'm using the word pivot on purpose. Pivotal moment for me because I found out things I liked. I opened myself to new opportunities. I pivoted, I adjusted, and I made a little change, still podcasting, different subject. And here we are, 1,500 episodes in, 10 years later, millions and millions of men across the planet being reached, all because of a pivot. Now I could have been hard-headed and stubborn and say, I'm not going to quit. I never throw in the towel. That's stupid. And we don't want to be stupid. You don't need to do things to bang your head against the wall just because you don't want to be a quote unquote quitter. And that's why it's important to differentiate between quit and pivot. But you have to be careful because you know yourself better than anybody else, even subconsciously, mostly subconsciously probably. So it's very easy for you to generate ideas in your head and make them sound real in order to justify you actually quitting. So you might say, I really want to start this business, but I can't right now because of the kids and the this and the that. Like you're just making excuses and you're betraying yourself. But you're telling yourself things that are true so that you can live with yourself. Because if you had this vision and this dream and this goal and you couldn't justify why you weren't doing it, you'd be miserable, like many people are. We all know those people. They have goals and dreams and visions and ideas, and they're not doing anything about it, and they're depressed, and they're down, and they're isolated, and maybe even suicidal. And it's like, how are we questioning the problem here? You're not actively working towards the things that you believe in your soul are meaningful to you. So of course you're depressed. Of course you're anxious. Of course you're feeling down and depressed and sad, and maybe even, of course you are. So pursue the things, do not betray yourself, and get after it. I would also want to address one other thing you said, putting your head down and trying to make it work no matter what. With regards to making it work no matter what, if it's still of interest to you, I would adopt that mantra. I'm going to make this work no matter what. There's a Latin phrase, and you guys tell me I'm wrong on this. I don't know Latin, but it's like en veniem aut faciem. I don't know if that's exactly how you pronounce it, but it means I will either find a way or make one. I will either find a way or make one. And that's an internal principle of mine. I'm either going to find a way to make this work or I'm going to create a way. That's it. Those are the only two options. So that's been helpful. But what I would say on a more tactical level is if you feel like you're banging your head against the wall and you're not making progress the way you want to, first, stop banging your head against the wall. Second, drop the ego. Third, go get some help. Go get some coaching. If you're going to the gym and you've plateaued and you're not doing any better than you were before and you're not seeing results or you're not losing weight, go hire a trainer. Go hire a fitness coach. Go hire a nutritionist. If you're doing a podcast and it's not growing and it's not building, hire another podcaster. I actually just last week reached out to 2 podcasters that are doing significantly better than I am to say, hey, and they don't offer this publicly. I said, hey, do you guys, can I get some coaching? Like, I'll hire you, whether it's for an hour or whether it's an ongoing basis or for a month or whatever. Unfortunately, both of them declined, but I'm just telling, and I'll find somebody who will do it because I'm willing to invest in them and myself. But I'm just telling you, even at this stage of the podcasting game, I'm still looking for people who are out ahead and looking for professional coaching so they can teach me the things I need to know to be better at this game. Coaching is crucial. All right, let's go to Mark Contreras. He says, when it comes to coaching your kid in a team sport, how do you set boundaries and make it clear to them when you're in coach mode and in dad mode? Also, it seems my son doesn't have a passion for playing soccer. He acts like sorta likes it, and I don't see him putting enough effort into sharpening his skill. How would you navigate a conversation regarding passion and effort and dedication? He says, regarding soccer, I'm having a difficult time coaching my son because he thinks I pick on him even though he does need more help than others. I stay away from him as much as possible during practices, but sometimes I need to be the one to call him out or focus on him more, but he hates it when I do that. Okay, cool. All valid. First of all, I want to commend you for coaching his team. That's really cool. A lot of dads don't do that. And I know firsthand experience, anytime I coach a team, it's like pulling teeth sometimes to get another dad just to help, to be an assistant coach. So I like that you're doing that. I think there's some conversations that you need to have, Mario, with your son about the boundaries. So first thing I would say is, hey, look, son, I don't know how old your boy is, by the way. That actually would be useful information because it would change the answer a little bit depending on his age. But what I would say is, hey, son, look, we need to be able to establish boundaries. I want to coach your team, but we need to establish the difference between when I'm in dad mode and when I'm in coach mode. And here's some things that will need to happen. Number one is you don't call me dad on the field. You call me coach. I'm your coach. Yes, I'm your dad, but there I'm your coach. And that's not only good for us and we know what mode we're in, but it's good for other people to see that I'm not playing favorites or giving you any sort of different treatment just because you happen to be my son. So when we're on the field, I am Coach Contreras, coach, or whatever, but you don't call me dad. So that's one thing that I would say. I would also have a real conversation. Again, I don't know how old he is, but I would start to have a conversation. Let's just assume he's, I don't know, 8, 9 or so, maybe right in there. I would start to have a conversation about ego with him. And because it sounds like a little bit of that is creeping in. He thinks that you're picking on him. And actually, maybe you are. So you have to be aware of that, because I sense it in here a little bit when you say he acts like he likes it, but he doesn't put enough effort into it. You don't really know how you're coming across to him. So you need to really be aware. He might be misinterpreting what you're saying, but if he's misunderstanding the way you're communicating, then that's an issue for both of you, not just him, because you want to reach him. And you also want to reach your other players. When I was coaching, the way that I would coach my son would be different than the way I might coach another boy on the team. And not because he's my son, but because he has a different personality than another player on the team. And I was not great at this. In fact, in a lot of ways, I was kind of horrible in some instances, which I hate to say, but we go through it. Like we mature and we grow up and we develop and we learn better. And as I'm coaching my kids' teams now, I've definitely enjoyed it more. I know they have as well because they're asking me if I'll coach their teams. But knowing your players is crucial. And of course, you're going to treat every one of them different. So when you're done with practice, you might on the way home say, hey, bud, look, I know I got a little bit after you at practice today about your passing. And it wasn't to pick on you. It wasn't to isolate you, but you're part of the team. And if you notice, I actually talked with little Billy too about him paying attention on the field and why it's important to be ready even if the ball is not near you. You remember me having that conversation with him? Yeah, I do. Right. So I want you to see that I'm not here to pick on you. I'm here to help you improve. And I'm not isolating you. I'm actually giving instruction and coaching to you and every other little boy or girl on the team. So do you see that? Do you recognize that? Do you acknowledge that? And I think he will start to see it. And then regarding the soccer thing, again, last time I'll say this, I don't know his age, but I know it's very easy for a dad who has high expectations of his son, and we all do, because we want the best for our kids. And that's where it comes from. It doesn't come from a place of malice. It comes from a place of benevolence. We want our children to thrive and to win and to succeed. But sometimes we as men think that we're talking to men, and we're not. We're talking to boys. Future men, sure, but not developed to the level that, like if I got in your face and said, hey man, you're messing up. Like, let's go. You're part of the team. Let's go. You could handle that significantly better. Again, I'm assuming than an 8 or a 9-year-old little boy can. So what I suggest is maybe he's not enjoying it because you're a drill sergeant. I don't know. I'm making some assumptions here. Maybe you are. And is there a way for you to coach in a different way that actually potentially with a little empathy, not softness, I'm not saying that, but just a more empathetic approach could actually help you be a better coach to not just your son, but the rest of the boys on the team? Could it actually help them more? And could it actually help you guys win more games, which is ultimately what you want to do? Teach them the skills to win on the field and in life. As I get a little older, I'm 43 years old, a little more gray hair you can see in the beard starting to creep in. I'm finding that making things fun, especially the younger the kids are, and just having a little bit more empathy and not being so tough and hard and rigid. I remember soccer last year with my son, and it's hilarious. He was 7 at the time. It's like herding cats. It's hilarious if you take it that way. Like you can be serious and have fun with it and coach. But I had the most fun I've ever had coaching a team last year. I think we won one game, and it was when I was out of town. The assistant coach came in and they won one game. The rest of the season, we didn't win one game. And I had more fun that season than any other time that I had. And don't get me wrong. You guys know, if you've been listening, I keep score. I'm here to win. This is not all about just having fun, but part of it is. Because if you're having fun with the boys and they like being with you, again, not soft, but they like being with you, you're going to have more influence. So when you speak up, they're going to listen. So evaluate that. Try to be as objective as possible. Maybe ask other dads or see what other coaches are doing. Maybe you have an assistant coach, or maybe you are the assistant coach and get some feedback from one of your other coaches. Ask your wife. I'd say be careful on that one, because women generally are going to be overly empathetic. Like if we're overly aggressive, they're overly empathetic. So you have to kind of find the balance of that. I think having a man there to be assertive and bold is a lot of the times what the situation calls for, but empathy allows for you to be assertive and bold without being a dickhead. So something to keep in mind. And then I did want to publicly say this as well. So Daniel Gray, another member of the Iron Council, says that he highly recommends Inside Out Coaching by Joe Ehrman. So that's a pretty good resource apparently as well. I don't know, but that's a recommendation. All right, guys, last question of the day. It says, a long time ago, I said something to Brecken. I apologize if the spelling's off. No, you got it right, John. about having the right attitude towards finances on his podcast. My question is, what is the right attitude towards finances? I struggle with my relationship with finances and have been constantly trying to improve. Any insight into basic financial relationships would be greatly appreciated. Well, so when I was doing financial planning, I had an early mentor. His name was Mark Madsen. His name is still Mark Madsen, actually. And in fact, he was on the podcast about 2 or 3 months ago. And he put together some training on what he calls money demons. And money demons are toxic, negative thoughts we have about money and our emotion towards money. And one of the exercises he would say to the group that he was coaching, guys, fill in the blank. Money is blank. And then you would write it down. And then he'd give you another prompt. Rich people are blank. And then you would write it down. What was fascinating about this is most of the people, not all, but most of the people said money is the root of evil. Money is greedy. Money is, those type of things. Or they'd say rich people are assholes. Rich people are pretentious. Rich people are crooks. Rich people are criminals. Not everybody, but most people had negative responses to money is and rich people are, and then the fill in the blanks. And what he said is that every time you say something negative about that, that's a money demon creeping in to your behavior and patterns around wealth building. So if you said rich people are assholes, well, you don't want to be an asshole, I don't think. So you're in your mind, even subconsciously, conflating being wealthy with being a dick. And if that's the case, even subconsciously, you will subconsciously sabotage yourself because you don't want to be that way and you equate having money to being that way. So this is where false dichotomies come in. People will say, well, I'd rather be broke and, be a nice person. Well, sure, okay, but that's a false dichotomy. You don't actually have to choose between the two. You can be massively wealthy and also be nice. That's why it's a false dichotomy. You don't have to choose between one or the other. So a lot of people have some toxic traits and behaviors about money. And you can start thinking about where these came from. And most of them come from when you were a kid. When you were a kid, the adults in your life said and did certain things with money that you adopted and never questioned. So your mom or dad likely said, well, money doesn't grow on trees. And technically that's true. But what is that teaching you? That you can't create wealth just out of nothing. Well, of course you can. Not out of nothing. I guess that's a theory, right? Is that energy is cannot be created or destroyed. It's just transferred. And so it can't be created out of nothing, but it can be created from effort and resources. Of course you can create money. You can grow your wealth. Of course you can. But you believe that money doesn't grow on trees, so you can't just create it out of thin air. Or what's another one? A penny saved is a penny earned. No, it isn't. A penny saved is a penny you didn't spend. You didn't earn anything else. Like that's as old as the Bible. It's the parable of the talents. When the Lord comes to the servants and says, here's some money, go put it to work. And the one guy buries it. He's not saving anything. So he comes back and the guy says, what'd you do with the money? He's like, I buried it because I didn't want to lose it. And he got shunned for burying his talents. And the guy that said, I took all of it and I put it to work and I doubled it and I came back and here's what I did. He was given more. He was taken the money, the talents that were taken from the one who buried it and given to the one who actually went out and did something with it. So a penny saved is a penny earned? That's stupid. A penny saved is a penny not spent. A penny earned means you actually went out and you added value to somebody's life and you created a product or a course or a program or a service that people would get value from. So you got to start thinking about the phrases that you learned. I remember growing up, like I had to go buy shoes at Payless Shoe Source because that's all that we could afford. And you know, you make ends meet, you make it work the way you can. And I remember I went to school one time and a kid made fun of they were cheetahs. So like knockoff Nikes. He made fun of them. I was probably like 7 or 8 and he made fun of them. And I'm 43 years old and I still remember that. So you can't tell me that we don't adopt past experiences, even something as simple as an 8-year-old making fun of you, that you won't adopt that into the rest of your life. Of course you will. So you have to go back and ask yourself, what are my money demons and where are they coming from? And then what do I replace them with? So for example, if my thought was rich people are a-holes, well, now I should probably start thinking rich people are generous. Rich people are creative. Rich people add value to the world. Rich people are intelligent. Rich people are resourceful. There's 1,000 things you could say about wealthy people. And if you associate positive characteristics with it, you're more likely to want to be that kind of person. The one that I've adopted into my life is I have a moral responsibility to be abundantly wealthy. A moral responsibility. And why do I feel that way? Because that's how I serve my family, my friends, my colleagues, you guys. If I have as much resources, charity. I pulled over the other day. I don't know why I did this because I usually don't. But there was this woman on the side of the road and she needed gas. And so I pulled over and I said, do you need help? And she's like, yeah, I'm trying to get some gas. And look, we can critique whether or not I should have done this or if it was better or worse. But I said, well, let's here. And I gave her $5. Like it wasn't a lot. Not too long ago, I saw another lady that was pulled over and she needed gas. And I can't remember if she had a gas can or if I did, or I went to the store and bought one, but I just went and filled it up like $15 worth of gas and brought it over to her. Like you can't do that if you don't have money. If I'm worried about making ends meet and I'm living paycheck to paycheck, I can't be charitable. I can't take the day off and go spend it on things that are important to me. I can't go to all the games that I can with my kids if I'm working because I'm enslaved because I haven't really figured out how to make money. Now, there's a whole lot of strategy and tactics that we can get into and all that stuff, and we will. Of course we will. And we have on this podcast, and we do it in the Iron Council as well. But the first thing you need to do is get your mindset around money right. If you believe it's good, and you believe that you have a moral responsibility to build wealth in your life, and that if you have more abundance and prosperity financially, that you can do bigger and better things for more people, you're naturally going to be more attracted to the activities and behaviors that produce wealth in your life. You're not going to save your money. You're not going to bury it so it can't be used. You're going to go out and enlist those dollars. You're going to go deploy them, if you will. I heard this from Kevin O'Leary on Shark Tank. You're going to go deploy your dollars and they're going to go out there and like little soldiers, little minions, and they're going to go collect their friends and they're going to come back to you. I love that, that visual. You're going to put your dollars to work. I just invested in a company, Black Flag, in fact. I have their shirt on right here. I just invested in this company. I had the means to do that. I'm very excited about it because of the products they're putting together and also the ability I have to see a return on my investment. I invest in Origin. I have other companies that I'm invested in because I believe that I need to put my money to work so that I can do bigger, better, greater, more charitable things in my life. That's what you're here to do. That's what I'm here to do. To be the best person I can possibly be and to help other people do the same. And I'm telling you, it's easier to do if you have the means to do it. So ask yourself, what are my money demons and what are the right attitudes around money that I can replace them with? To go back to your original question, you have a moral responsibility to build wealth in your life. That's one. Being wealthy actually means you're creative, resourceful, intelligent, thoughtful, generous. Those are things that you could say. And then realizing that money is just not bad. You know, a lot of people have adopted, here's another phrase, money is the root of all evil. We hear that in the Bible. Well, it's not what it says. It's not money is the root of all evil. The love of money, the love, and I would actually say it's probably more akin to lust, the lust of money. Because I think you can love money if you know that it represents wealth, value. This is the last thing I'll say on it. I get worked up because this is like my previous job here, but what you need to understand is that money is only a metric of value. That's all it is. It's nothing more. It's nothing less. The more money you have, the more perceived value that you've given and created in other people's lives. If I make $500,000 this year, that's the amount of value that I provided, perceived value that I provided to other people. If I make $750,000, then I provided a perceived $250,000 more value in people's lives. And if you look at it like that, then isn't it our job to create as much value for other people as possible? Of course it is. You start adopting those mindsets, and then we'll get into strategies and tactics, but you got to get the mind right first. All right, guys, that's all I've got for you. Great questions today. Hopefully I gave you some good answers. Kip will be back for the better next week. It's always better when he's here. We can bounce ideas off each other, and we always have some good banter as well. So make sure you tune in, subscribe. If you haven't left a rating and review on Spotify or iTunes, or I guess it's not iTunes, it's Apple Podcast. That changed like 7 years ago. I'm still calling it iTunes. But Apple Podcast and Spotify, that would mean a lot to me. This is a grassroots movement. We're trying to add as much value to people's lives as we possibly can. So getting the word out is important. And then, the only other thing I was going to tell you about is make sure you check out themensforge.com, themensforge.com. This is an event that me, Larry Hagner, Matt Boudreau, Connor Beaton, Matthew Vincent are putting together just outside of St. Louis, May 1st through the 4th. And we just got word from Dr. Robert Glover, the author of No More Mr. Nice Guy. He's going to be one of our featured speakers at the event. So would love to have you guys there. That's themensforge.com. All right, guys, we'll be back on Friday. Until then, go out there, take action, and become a man you are meant to be.